All right.
Yeah.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. We're here for the Human Resources Committee meeting in room 903. A copy of the Open Meetings Act is located on the wall as you enter the room. We'll go around the table and introduce ourselves, starting with Diane.
Diane Carlson, Deputy County Administrator.
Kim Bolo with the admin office.
EJ Morgan, County Commissioner.
Commissioner Mary Borgeson, County Board.
Karen Butch, HR.
Shamar Nutt, Clerk's Office.
Dan Esch, Douglas County Clerk.
Tim McNally, HR.
Colleen Frederickson, HR.
Anthony Strong, Local 571.
And online, we have Commissioners Friend and Garcia. And then Lori Hirsch from our office, Catherine Hall, Marcos, Sean Johnson, Sherry Larson, Sandra Conley, and I can't remember Siegel's first name.
Yosef.
Yosem, yep. Okay, that's who we have. Patrick will be here joining us in just a minute. He's here. Look at that. And we have one item today, which actually shouldn't take us too long. But it's our the explanation of our changes to the compensation plan, and I'm gonna hand it over to the HR folks.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, how are you doing? Commissioner?
Good. Like your hair.
Thank
It
you.
looks nice.
Today, I am coming before the HR committee on behalf of the Civil Service Commission. Want to go through the presentation, and address any questions. The compensation rule, the compensation policy was emailed out, but it is 12 pages long. So I'm just going to be touching on highlights. So the compensation policy, just as a historical perspective, was last presented to the county board in 1997, and it was amended in 1998, and it really hasn't been touched much since then. Under the Civil Service Act, specifically Nebraska Revised Statute 23409, it says that the Civil Service Commission may recommend to the county board salary and pay plans for the employees that are covered by the Civil Service Commission or the Civil Service Act. So we are here today to do that. The policy draft was actually created by our office, and it was presented to the Civil Service Commission and then subsequently to department heads, elected officials for their feedback. It was also emailed to all of the labor unions asking for review and input. And then on 3/25, it was re-presented to the Civil Service Commission, at which time they adopted the plan as it is stated here today. The guiding principles for the plan were to have competitive compensation for employees, to reward employee performance, to ensure internal equity amongst the position classifications covered under the civil service, to maintain consistency of compensation among those positions, to also compensate equitably and avoid discrimination, and to administer a financially sound plan that the county can plan for from one fiscal period to another fiscal period. The plan contents itself, we spent quite a bit of time standardizing definitions so that we would have a way to have a common vernacular that we could discuss amongst all of the departments and elected officials. We also talk about the compensation methods, overtime versus compensatory time, and the laws that relate to that, the new hire pay rate, and how that determination is occurring so that it is also consistent and equitable and we avoid any legal compliance issues. The establishment of a new type of compensation, which is a trainee rate that we've never really done before. To talk about pay upon reemployment and how to handle new job creation or current modifications to existing jobs. To talk about detail and out of class pay, promotions, transfers, demotions, how we would handle an annual structural review, what we do with individuals when they're on a leave of absence and maybe they have a pay increase at that time. involuntary transfers, and this really isn't like a transfer that an employee would do on their own. This is more like if two offices were to merge or departments were to merge, and there would be a change in a person's job that would cause it to go down in pay. Select position market pay adjustment is also a new concept that we are introducing in order to address issues that may occur in the local job market. To talk about how we separate supervisor and subordinate compensation to avoid wage compression, bilingual pay premiums, plan revisions going forward, and then the plan enforcement itself. So on page 6, then, new concepts, the new hire appointments. Because we have step plans and historically people were normally start at step 1. We're finding that there's more and more demand on the part of department heads and also on the, well, really on the part of applicants asking that employees be hired above step 1. And so the question becomes, how do we deal with that when we have a new hire and we're gonna bring them in at step 3? So we look at what kind of qualification factors that they have that are job related, like their education, work experience, the complexity of the experience they have. And if they have any additional qualifications like certifications or licenses, and those things should be taken into consideration if they are above what's required for the minimum of the job. The reason we wanted to talk about the new hire appointments is that we need to make sure there's consistency within a position classification or even within a job grade, but also throughout the department. Because what happens if we bring in a person at, and I'm just gonna use some example numbers, we hire a person that has 3 more years of experience than the job requires 6 months ago. And that person we were able, because they were willing, or the market wasn't where it is today. It's changed that much in 6 months. And now we bring that person, we brought them in at $15 an hour. And now we've got a person who just barely meets the qualifications. And in order to take the job, they're demanding $20 an hour. That causes a problem if we bring that person in that doesn't have as much experience as a person we hired 6 months ago. That person that was hired 6 months ago is probably going to be upset that they're not getting paid more when they have more than 3 years of experience. So we talked about the fact that if that occurs, that we need to, that at that point in time, we need to move others. We have to adjust the others in that pay range so there's still pay equity and we don't have any legal issues associated with that. Sorry, I should have waited for you, Kim.
No, I should have had it up there for them.
No, it's all me. I'm just busy talking.
Sorry, Karen.
That's okay. You can either use the PowerPoint or the actual plan document, whichever is easy.
Do you have that ready?
The one next to it is the
PowerPoint
map.
is what you're
Yeah.
going
That's-
for, right?
oh,
There you go.
that's-
There you go.
So click
it's
on
the
that.
wrong- it's the
Oh,
wrong
that's the
one.
wrong one.
It's the wrong
Oh.
one.
Oh.
I do bring it up on the USB drive if that will help you.
Put it in. Go ahead and put it in there.
Got it, 'cause I've got one here.
Kim, if you need assistance, just let us know and Jake can run over.
Thanks. I think I have it now.
Yep.
Can you see it, Leah?
Not yet.
Share it.
Share,
Share.
yeah. There.
Should be it right there.
Now
Can you
we,
see it now?
now we can see it.
Thanks, Leah.
Thank
And then
you.
page 6. You.
Okay, so we were just talking about the new hire appointments and how we just need to make sure that when we do bring someone in, that we're not causing wage compression or we're not causing a situation of pay inequity that could pose a liability for the county legally. So the next section really is the trainee rate, and this is a brand new concept. We're finding that in some areas, it's very hard to find people who meet the qualifications that we have established. And some of those are, and I'll just use an example. We have a hard time finding people that have the necessary qualifications to be a licensed mental health professional, say, for example. And so they may be somewhat short of the position qualifications. Maybe they're very close to finishing their certification program or their educational requirements. And they want to come to work for us because they know they're going to come to work for us, but we can't hire them because they don't quote meet the qualifications of the job. This would allow us to bring that person into the job, but we would pay them less than the starting rate for up to 12 months. And so they might get an 8% reduction from the start one step rate, but it would allow us to bring that person in and they could begin training and learning the job. And then after that 6 to 12 month period, they would be able to get to step 1 and then start the normal progression because they would have met the training requirements of the job at that point in time. So the pay rate is at the discretion of the department head. They are allowed to set it anywhere from 1% to up to 10% less than the start rate based upon how short the person is and the experience and qualifications that they have. The out of class pay rate is something that's a little bit different. We've always had what we would consider to be a detail pay. And a detail pay assignment was generally if someone took on part of a job's responsibilities or they took on a project. Or in some cases, they could take over the person's entire job. Like if somebody left and they were the heir apparent, they might be moved into that position. Well, the latter example is really more of an out-of-class pay assignment where they're actually doing the other person's job in total. And in that situation, they would receive up to they would receive a 5% pay increase, and then they would be placed in that job classification. So for example, maybe they're court cashier 2, and they're being asked to be the supervisor and the clerk of the district court's office over that area. That would be an out of class pay assignment. They would get 5% and then placed into a step that matches with that position classification. And so they either get the 5% or the minimum of that job grade, whichever is greater. And then they can stay in that position for up to 6 months, and they can ask for an extension of time with approval of myself or whoever the HR director is. And they can then stay in that position until maybe that position is posted because maybe somebody is leaving or maybe they're just out on a leave of absence. So that is the idea behind out of class, is that they get to move into that position classifications job grade. Whereas with the detailed pay assignment, if they're just assuming part of it, they could get up to 5% of that pay rate, but they would onto their base pay, but they would not necessarily move into a different job grade because of it. They would just see an increase in their pay rate. As far as promotions, this, you might recall has been discussed with the board previously. And so the promotional policy is, 5% minimum up to 15%. And it can go up to 20% with the HR director's approval. And there are different factors that can be taken into consideration in determining that percentage, like if they're gonna lose longevity pay, if they're going to lose overtime, that can be a big factor. We've seen that happen at corrections where we've had an individual who was a lieutenant and was earning a lot of overtime move into a captain position where they don't earn overtime at all. It can be based upon maybe they've been, they're within like a month of getting their step increase. And they would lose that step increase per se, because it would be part of the promotional increase. So there's a lot of factors that can be taken into consideration by the department head or elected official to determine that 5 to 15%. And sometimes in some cases, they may need to go up to 20%. So that language has been codified in the plan. We also define transfers more specifically because when we're moving from one pay scale under a contract to another pay scale under another contract, sometimes it's hard to determine if it's a promotion, if it's a transfer, if it's a demotion. And we use the minimum pay rate to determine that, and that's defined as far as what is a transfer. And then for demotion, the same way. And we also defined that there is a difference between a voluntary and an involuntary demotion. And then on the bottom of this page, it talks about select market position, market pay adjustment. And this is where we run into problems sometimes where, say, the comparables that we look at for whether it's a union or a non-union job just don't quite match up to what the local market is bearing. That can happen. For example, we've had issues with nurses. And so in that case, if we find that the local market is just, we are so underwater on pay, that this allows us to move them up to a maximum of 3 grades higher than their current grade. And that allows us then to be more swift in adjusting it. Of course, budget factors would come into play and those would have to be addressed, but it allows us the flexibility of being able to do that to address scarcity in the local labor market. So I think that this is a good mechanism, and they would work with HR on that to determine, we would determine HR whether we need to go up 1 grade, 2 grades, 3 grades. But if it was more than that, we would have to come back to the board to discuss that with you all. And then we also have come up with procedures for bilingual pay. And we've codified the testing, and then we've established a standard pay rate associated if someone is providing those services. They receive a bona fide pay rate change, and it applies every day and every hour they work, whether they're interpreting or not. And that right now is set at $1 an hour. And if they are already providing those services in their job, we're not going to ask those individuals to test their grandfathered, but people in the future that want to have the bilingual pay premium, they would be required to pass testing to make sure that they are competent to provide those services on behalf of the county. And so that is a very quick overview. If you want to go into anything more specific, if you have questions on any of these, I am happy to address those with you.
All right, I'll go in the room first. Are there any questions, Patrick?
So just some things that you may hear when this comes to the county board, maybe not. So the sticky issues and concerns that have been expressed by elected officials and some elected officials, some department directors is what happens when I want to hire somebody in at a certain rate beyond step one, or I want to promote somebody to a certain rate. And it has to be approved by the HR director, and the HR director says, no, for the reasons why she previously stated, equity or, legal issues. Some of them felt like there should be some kind of appeal process, or that they should just have that flexibility as an elected official, or department director, but particularly as an elected official. And there's no really any super easy answer to that, except to say that it's not uncommon, and actually is pretty common, I would say, that the HR director makes that decision because they're the professional. And that's one of the biggest reasons why HR departments are so unpopular. I hate to say it that way, but the other reason is compliance issues. So I thought about, well, would they appeal it to me? They appeal it to the Civil Service Commission, which they can't do. Appeal it to the Civil Service Commission chair, which I don't think you want to put Denise Lakai or whoever the chair is going to be in that position, or I don't want to be in the position to have elected officials and department directors come to me and have me be the arbiter of something that I haven't been involved in. So again, if you leave it up to the elected official or department director to say, I should be able to hire somebody at whatever step I want to hire them because I need that for whatever reason, or promote somebody at whatever rate I want to promote them in because I should have that ability. I can understand that to a certain extent, but it does open the door to some issues. And the other problem that was expressed, or concern that was expressed, is if I'm gonna hire somebody at a certain step and there's other people in that position, you're gonna make me bump everybody up to that pay rate, and that might prevent me from doing it because I don't have the budget dollars. But again, there are some issues with that from a legal perspective and just from an equity perspective and from a morale perspective. So after giving it a lot of thought, I'm really comfortable with the way it's written. And if there's a lot of problems with it, then I guess the county board can revisit it down the road.
Anybody else in the room have any questions or, yes?
So, looking at the premium pay for bilingual, making that $1 an hour, would that go across the board? Cause I know we've negotiated in some of our contracts, would you bump everyone to that $1 if it's lower? Cause so it's across the board type, or?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Anthony. How it's worked with union contracts is that if the union and civil service is if the union contract has specific language that is contrary to the policy, then the contract would apply. If the contract is silent on that particular item, then most of the contracts have language in there that says if it's not addressed in the contract, then it defaults to the civil service policies.
Okay,
So if the contract is 75 cents, then the bilingual pay would be 75 cents for those in the unit. If there's nothing in there, then it would be $1.
okay, I'm just curious because being in the middle of negotiations, I didn't ask for that on purpose, but now, it's just one of those situations where since this is changing, it'd be nice if we could change across the board so that everyone comes to a better pay rate, I guess, if that's what we're looking at doing. Because I know I've gotten complaints about that, but they didn't bring it to me early enough, and I'm not willing to go backwards in negotiations. So this is all new to me, and since that is new, I would hope that we would look at offering that to that $1 per hour, but that's up to the board, obviously.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the room? All right, anyone else or anybody online have any questions or comments? Mr. Friend?
Thanks. I couldn't find the button to actually raise my hand. I can't remember where it was. To Patrick's point, Karen, do you think, I mean, and as an HR industry professional and some of the uh, and your team and some of the folks you're working with from a creative standpoint, do you guys feel like the system, to Patrick's point, do you feel like the system gives you the flexibility to deal with those political issues right now? Or do you think that people like me and PJ and Marianne and everybody else are going to have to go in here and deal with the lack of flexibility based on what you believe are professional standards and your ability? Look, you're trying to recruit, you're trying to help get people to the county. I know that, but is that a problem? I mean, what Patrick addressed, is there something we can do right now to make sure we're addressing the issue in the most creative manner possible?
That's a really good question, Commissioner. I think we've tried to build in as much flexibility to the policy as we can. I do think that there are situations that are a little bit more complicated and we can't address every situation in a policy. But I do believe that we have allowed for changes under the old policy. Really, nobody was supposed to ever start above step one. And we're saying now, if they've got enough qualifications above what's required in the job, they can start at step 9. We don't care. But they have to have the qualifications to justify them to start at step 9. And then it is a morale, it is a legal issue if we don't address anybody else that has those same qualifications that's not on step 9. Because if the market shifts, it shifts for everybody. And if we bring in somebody at step 9 and we've got a person that has 3 more years experience of that than that person, and they get wind of it, they're gonna start looking to leave the county potentially because they're gonna feel that it's inequitable. And it'll become a morale issue. And it poses a legal liability for us. So it's balancing flexibility versus legal compliance. And that is an issue that every HR professional faces when it comes to any kind of employment decision, whether it's compensation, discipline, accommodations for disabilities, you name it, that's the issue.
Okay, Sean Johnson?
Thank you for the opportunity to make a couple comments. I, as always, agree with most of what Patrick said, but not 100%. So, I am of the opinion that ultimately, of course, with HR consultation, which I always deeply appreciate, that ultimately new hire rates and also the position reviews should be the ultimate responsibility of the department director and the elected official. And, many things have already been said. I won't belabor the point. In addition to the market fluctuations, we are seeing different applicant pools each time we hire, and those are varied. And sometimes we have rock star candidates who we are just not able to offer the right compensation according to X number of years, X number of degrees. And I think those forward-facing departments like mine who are interfacing with the public, mine in particular, I know all of you know that we meet with youth and families, and we have to have really dynamic people who can join with those families who have a, really certain personality that they're engaging those youth and families, and that doesn't always translate on paper. And so I just kind of want to throw that out there for consideration.
And that's a good point, but I'll go back to Patrick's because I think not having kind of a central what happens, and I've seen it willy-nilly by whether it be a department head or an elected official deciding things that are kind of outside the policy just because they think they can. So there has to be some I don't know what the word is, some rules that people have to follow, but I completely understand what you mean, but not that that will take care of it. But I think that has to actually be tighter, in my opinion. Any other questions or comments? So what's the timeline for this to be on our county board agenda? If this committee decides to move it forward?
I would like to request that we have it on the board agenda next week on the 1st of April and that it be effective the 1st of April. A lot of departments have been waiting for these changes for a significant amount of time. Also, as some of you know, I will be leaving the county on a leave of absence effective April 3rd. And I would really like to have this in place for everybody before I leave, if possible.
I'm okay with trying to see it on the
Okay.
agenda the 3rd now.
It'll be the
Roger
first.
Garcia is on, we'll see.
It'll
what
be
they
the
think.
first,
Yeah, it'd be next week.
next week.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah,
So we'll put it on for discussion / action if this committee is okay with moving it forward. I mean, that's again, the committees where we discuss it and then recommend it go to the county board. And if everybody's okay, we'll put in the agenda item to go on next week. If there's no other questions or,
Mike or
Comment?
Roger, what do you think?
Yeah, like Mary Ann said, we can put it on there for discussion and potential action. So that sounds good.
okay,
Thank you.
any other questions or comments? All right, that is the only agenda item. I
that'd
told
be
you
great.
30 minutes. Only agenda item.
Good going.
Yeah. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for being on Zoom and being in the room.
Thank you.